Good morning from Bosnia and Herzegovina. Good morning from Sarajevo and Foundation Ali Izetbegovic. I will contribute to today's discussion with some viewpoints of Bosnia and Herzegovina, starting with the global perspective about the world that is becoming more complex and dynamic. Globalization has provided free and open flow of people, ideas, values, goods, communications, technologies, and other human products. Simultaneously, it has provided the same chance to all kinds of security threats, risks, and challenges, which has made modern states, regardless of their size, strength, and possibilities, more vulnerable than ever before. Making them to the position that no state could provide the security on its own. Thus, interdependence has become a major feature of international relations and international security. This is also true when we speak about the interplay of different security elements at the national level. Therefore, the national security and defense system may not reduce its magnitude and capacities. In fact, to be a relevant actor of domestic security and international exchange, the national security system needs to be subject to constant strengthening and improvements. The speed of overall change of the world affairs is constantly growing without any sign of slowing down. Quite opposite. It will continue to speed up, and not by linear, but rather by an exponential curve. Thus, the time becomes more and more precious resource and value of the mankind as a whole, but simultaneously of every single individual as well. The comprehensive technological contribution to the nature, style, quality, and way of life of the modern world and every country individual is getting increasingly sophisticated, important, and visible from day to day. The fact that technology takes over many of the human duties and capacities doesn't diminish the importance and value of the man's overall role and importance. The role of the man and his leading position will constantly gain importance and priority before and above any and every improvement and innovation he creates. Responsible, sober, and courageous leadership is now available and more important than ever before in our history. The increasing options of availability makes our selection and choices steps more important, given the relevance they provide upon further developments and sequence of events. With all this in mind, and many other relevant facts that we may think about, it is safe to argue that the period of the Cold War is behind us and the time of the Cold Peace ahead of us. For a number of reasons, it's more and more obvious that the Cold Peace is complex and potentially more dangerous than the Cold War used to be. A lot of changes have taken place. The global domains of power, as Zbigniew Brzezinski used to qualify them as military, economic, technological, and cultural, migrated during the last decade of the previous millennium from Europe to the Pacific region. The Eurocentric world we used to know for the last few centuries ceased to exist. The unipolar world that has existed in the very aftermath of the Cold War has already provided space to the multipolar world. The century of Atlantic is behind us, and now we live the century of Pacific with an increased role of the Indian Ocean. The United States, that used to be over-Atlantic oriented, are now over Pacific oriented. And some views from our country, from Bosnia and Herzegovina. As a small state with a specific geopolitical, geoeconomic, and geocultural position, whose role often, and in turbulent times of history in particular, exceeds our quantitative size, we need to observe and understand developments and processes globally if we are to survive locally. We respect the wisdom that life is lived ahead but understood looking backwards. The complex living environment we are part of provides long living suggestions still relevant today. This is particularly true when we tend to correlate the power of arguments with the arguments of power. French Cardinal Richelieu from the 17th century, in his political testament, wrote, "He who has the power often has the right, and he who is weak can only with difficulty keep from being wrong in the opinion of the majority of the world." Ancient philosopher Cikotić, 5th century before Christ, used to argue, the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must. To those who rely upon the impact the justice and the law may produce, and who are often frustrated with the effects of different legal and judicial institutions, the long existing hierarchy of laws may be useful. For Thomas Aquinas, an Italian philosopher and theologian from the 13th century, human laws are derived from natural law, which is a participation in the eternal law. The eternal law, divine wisdom of God, which oversees the common good and governs everything. It's at the top, followed by natural law and then human law. Divine law is revealed law of God to man, while natural law is the imprint of internal law on the hearts of man. Since there are a few levels of the human law, nationally and internationally, the lower the level of the law, the time of justice achievement is faster, but possible chance of mistake higher. Bosnia and Herzegovina is situated in the heart of the Balkans, of the Balkan Peninsula. In a way, it's a periphery of different cultures and civilizations, overlapping together at the soil of our homeland, making in a specific way a cultural and civilizational society of higher level. In terms of ethnic and religious backgrounds, we have a mixture composed of Bosniaks, which by religion are Muslims, Serbs, Orthodox, Catholics, Croats, as well as Jewish community and some other groups from the immediate and wider neighborhood. During our previous war, our enemies attempted to qualify the war we had between 92 and 95 as clash of civilizations. From within our country, we know it was not. As a matter of fact, we understood this term as a self-conflicting, self-contradiction, contradiction in adjective. The essence of any civilization is in its constructive and progressive approach, not in killings and destruction. Our belief in Bosnia and Herzegovina is that we benefit from the present mixture of all differences we have got in our country. This mixture has made an amalgam called Bosnian spirituality, representing cultural, civilization, and social value above and beyond any single ethnic or religious group being part of this. The superior value of Bosnian spirituality and harmonious and peaceful coexistence of many differences was recognized by the enemy of Bosnia and Herzegovina. They used an excuse that they had to defend Christianity and Europe from Islamic fundamentalism. The essence was completely different. They attempted to take parts of Bosnia and Herzegovina and join them to territories of Greater Serbia or Greater Croatia, respectively. At the beginning of the war, the former Yugoslav robust military was fully controlled by Serbian nationalists. An unjust UN arms embargo had been imposed upon Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thus, we haven't got the chance to procure weapons badly needed for our defense. Many politicians, strategists, and analysts of the time thought we had no chance of survival. But these very unfavorable circumstances had not discouraged us. Prior to the outbreak of the war, the leadership of Bosnia and Herzegovina, President Alija Izetbegović in particular, had made all reasonable and possible efforts to prevent the war and find political solution without bloodshed, people suffering, and destruction of the country. Civilized, negotiated instruments, soft power, even some elements of cultural diplomacy attempts, having no appropriate counterparts and results on the side of the aggressors, we organized all our defense resources with an aim of our homeland defense. At the beginning, it was very tough, even hopeless. But we had known that all the weapons our enemies possessed had got limited range and limited destructive power. We knew and believed that the war was waged at the level of morale, of politics, of media, and then at the level of the battlefield. Despite enormous advantages our adversaries had got in weapons, equipment, possession of key grounds and infrastructures, we conducted our defense at much higher moral level. We didn't follow the war behavior patterns of our enemies, who killed civilians, prisoners of war, used raids as an instrument of war, destroyed cultural and sacral monuments, committed ethnic cleansing, and even the crime of genocide. We didn't seek revenge, even when circumstances availed opportunities to us, since we respected the principle that the tolerance was the highest level of power and will for revenge the first sign of weakness. Our defense, fully aligned with the rules and habits of international humanitarian law, gained moral and political support for our country and our defense on many sides. Gradually, the political attitude among the relevant international actors especially started to change to our favor. The local and world media, along the development of these changes, were producing increasingly positive image of our fight for defense and freedom. And on the other side, Bosnia and Herzegovina army was maturing and progressing from tactical to strategic victories. Through fierce and very costly defense, we provided the survival and continued existence of our freedom and justice-loving, multi-ethnic country. Our defense became widely known as the miracle of Bosnian resistance. President Izetbegović used to advise us to be wise whenever possible and brave when we had to. Thus, we negotiated whenever we saw a minimal chance of reaching a consensus and fought when we had no alternative. Now, 3 decades after the war, I believe that our ability of conciliation was more convincing and provided stronger contribution to the reconstruction of the country than our capability to achieve military victories. But without having developed combat might of ours, we couldn't be in the position to show mercy and conciliation towards anyone. And my concluding remarks, we understand that the history of the mankind is history of killings, conquest, pillage, and destruction. But we also understand that wars and conflicts, apart from their negative side, have got positive developmental impact on all society. Most of human innovations, discoveries, and improvements throughout the history have been made in order to provide supremacy and advantages of certain countries over their opponents and adversaries. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, we rely upon the axiom, if you want to live in peace, you must be prepared for war. Our freedom and stability, as well as our international position, have been covered by a very high cost. Our President Ali Izetbegovic used to argue that at the minimum of Bosnian soil, the maximum of world politics take place. Bosnia is a moral issue, and moral issues are of constant interest of all actors of international relations and international security. We are hopeful the time to come, apart from all challenges, will offer enough opportunities where we may prefer inclusion over exclusion, cooperation over confrontation, and integration over fragmentation. We trust more an alliance of civilizations rather than the clash of civilizations. We still believe that we need to have global thinking and reliance on universal and human civilizational values if we want to experience local and individual success and satisfaction of our performance. I thank you very much for your kind attention and remain available for extended exchange and cooperation.